Who are you?
My name is Anissa, and I'm an agent of the Viltrum Empire.
It's no secret that the world of Invincible is kinda messed up. The American comic book series by Robert Kirkman is probably one of the most brutal depictions of superheroes out there. And in today's oversaturated superhero landscape, that's saying something. But today, we're going to take a look at a love story that's so disgusting and twisted that it might get too much, even for you Invincible fans. Of course, it's Mark and Anissa we're talking about. Consider this a trigger warning. The video ahead contains some of the most gruesome events with fairly horrifying stuff like sexual abuse. And if you're still hanging on, be prepared for a story that might just make you feel like taking a shower afterward. But before we move on, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. It might just be a small click for you, but to us it means a lot. Now let's dive right in. But be warned, this might just make you physically sick. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Didn't you hear me? I said I only wished to speak.
Origins of Mark and Anissa, the superhero and the soldier. Before we dive into the violent, convoluted romance between Mark and Anissa, let's briefly get to know them a bit better. So, as we all know, Mark Grayson, or Invincible, is the hybrid Viltrumite human protagonist of the storied saga. Mark is the son of the universe's version of Superman, Nolan Grayson, known to the world as Omni-Man. Well, it turns out that Omni-Man isn't really the brave, mustachioed savior that humanity believes him to be. Instead, he's been planted on Earth by a vastly superior warmongering race, the aforementioned Viltrumites. The Viltrumites are, honestly, more like weapons of mass destruction that appear human-like. These terrifying specimens are endowed with a bunch of physical attributes that make them faster, stronger, and more destructive than even the most advanced human inventions. Their powers also make them nearly immortal, slowing down a Viltrumite's natural aging process to the point that they can survive thousands of years with ease. Viltrumite civilization is also exceedingly tyrannical, with power being the deciding factor in almost all their politics. For most of the series, Viltrumites are the peak of power in the Invincible universe, easily the most dangerous adversary to have ever turned their attention toward Earth. The series eventually begins with Omni-Man's true motives being revealed to the audience after a brutal massacre of the woefully underpowered Guardians of the Globe at the hands of the Viltrumite. It is also during this time that Mark's powers begin to manifest to a much higher degree, making him, well, invincible. It takes a while before Invincible learns of his father's violent agenda. Moreover, Mark himself is extremely integral to the Viltrumites' plans, as it is later revealed that their species is on the brink of total extinction. However, instead of joining his father's plans, Mark becomes one of the few people who stand a chance against the intergalactic warriors. Obviously, that has its consequences, like being driven headfirst into a subway filled with passengers, their limbs splattering on impact with you, while your psychotic father grabs you by the neck. Yeah, it's not exactly fun to be invincible, but Nolan seems to suffer a change of heart by the end of his bloody conversation, and flies off into deep space. These events essentially form the crux of the first season of Amazon Prime's animated adaptation. For the months after the incident, Mark and the rest of the world believed that Omni-Man was gone for good, but Viltrumites aren't really the kind of aliens that disappear. While working with Science Dog, a Thraxan on his home planet, Mark meets the Thraxan civilization's unlikely ruler, his father. Discovering that your murderous father is the monarch of a race of mantis-like aliens is undoubtedly quite shocking. Even more unsettling is the fact that Nolan has already fathered a son with a Thraxan. Mark, being the great guy he is, soon warms up to his half-brother, but their peaceful interlude is interrupted by a Viltrumite raid. This is actually the first time we've caught a glimpse of the Viltrum Empire in all its glory. The warriors apprehend Nolan and carry him off to their planet, where Viltrumite justice awaits the man once known as Omni-Man. Fortunately, Mark and his half-brother survive the attack, and Mark eventually carries the infant back to Earth to be raised by his mother. This chain of events actually forms the foundation for Anissa's troubled relationship with Mark. This is the first time we see true Viltrumites exert their full might, and more importantly, it tells us that they're fully aware of Nolan's son's strengths and limitations. After all, Omni-Man was something of a badass even back on his home planet. However, for the moment, it feels like Mark and his loved ones are safe. Of course, Anissa arrives to disrupt everything. So one day, while Mark and his mother are having a peaceful lunch together, Anissa just pops in and casually begins to threaten Deborah. In the animated series, this scene takes place with Mark's girlfriend Amber, instead of his mother, but you get the point. The Viltrumite seems uncharacteristically non-violent in her approach though, prompting Mark to entertain a private conversation with her. Initially, Anissa seems to be not that bad for a Viltrumite soldier. She assures Mark that if Earth surrenders, life will get easier for both humans and Viltrumites. With their technology, the aliens could probably solve every unsolvable problem on Earth. ranging from cancer to poverty. Their conversation is interrupted by Cecil Stedman, who alerts Invincible to a large, tentacled, anime-inspired kaiju tearing down a cruise ship. Anissa agrees to help Mark save the ship, but that kinda proves that it's Anissa who's the real monster. We quickly learn that she's vastly more experienced and powerful than Mark, even exceeding Omni-Man in some areas, like speed. That's never a good sign. Mark, who seems to have almost developed a strange affinity for brutal beatdowns, denies Anissa's offer to join the Viltrumite cause. He of course gets punched to a bloody pulp, and there's no doubt that Mark doesn't really have much of a choice in the matter. It's actually pretty evident from this first appearance that Anissa is a sociopath. Calm and collected, even when literally dismembering other sentient creatures, she's truly the perfect Viltrumite soldier. Later in the comics, we learn that she's thousands of years old and one of the original Viltrumite warriors, who witnessed Thrag's ascension to the throne of the Viltrum Empire. In terms of power, Anissa is one of the scariest characters we've witnessed until this point in the series. Though Invincible is yet to reach the boundless power he would eventually gain through the series, it's clear that Anissa is a world-ending threat, even when alone. We do have plenty of those in the Invincible universe, but what makes Anissa truly detestable is her single-minded devotion to Viltrumite progress, no matter what. And nowhere is her fanatical loyalty clearer than in her relationship, if you can even call it that, with Mark.
My name is Anissa, and I'm an agent of the Viltrum Empire. And if you think you can cross the...
Mark and Anissa's twisted tale. A brief scroll through any Invincible internet forum will probably alert you to the fact that Anissa is probably the most hated character in Invincible. Surprisingly, actually, because she only has some recurring appearances in the show. But rest assured when we tell you that some of her actions in the comics are so heinous that they might be straight up deemed unforgivable. And for good reason. But since Anissa, despite her flaws, is just as complex a character as the others in the series, her actions do merit a proper analysis. And who knows, maybe there still might be some sort of redemption awaiting her. Let's continue our story from Telescria, the coalition of planets' secret HQ, where the Viltrumite War is taking place. During this massive conflict, Anissa can be seen fighting with all the other Viltrumites against the group of heroes consisting of Invincible, Nolan, the Viltrumite rebel Thaddeus, etc., etc. In this battle, her immense combat prowess becomes even more evident as Nolan struggles to contain the fierce warrior. Unfortunately, our heroes suffered a brutal defeat during this fight. Nolan and Mark survive, but are thoroughly battered and broken. Surprisingly, Viltrumite leader Thrag spares the broken heroes, citing the fact that their dwindling race could not lose any more members. The Viltrumite's inability to breed is actually the seed of all the horrors that are to follow. After the war, it became certain that the primary objective of the Viltrumites on Earth was procreation. Mark had already proven that interbreeding with humans was a viable option for the Viltrumites, as Invincible basically has all the powers that a pure-blooded Viltrumite does. Owing to this, Thrag unleashes his soldiers upon Earth to have a good time. Procreation is key here, but you know what we mean. Thrag's plan of interbreeding with humans goes pretty well for the most part, with one exception. Anissa. Her excitement for the project can be surmised completely in a particularly hilarious frame, where Anissa is being eyed by two suitors at the park. Imagine being an all-powerful godlike creature, only to go looking for Tinder dates. So instead of finding a human suitable to her tastes, Anissa comes up with the plan to have a child with Invincible. At least the guy can fly, I guess. However, Mark isn't actually into the whole plan, and this leads to another skirmish between the two. However, this time around, the results are far more disastrous. Anissa overpowers Invincible, rips his costume, and basically forces herself upon him. When she's done, Mark is but a writhing, tearful mess at the bottom of the crater, traumatized for the rest of his life. When Anissa and Mark meet after this incident, the encounters are always chilling and even disturbing. Anissa never really receives any repercussions for her act, and even teams up with the heroes every once in a while. But a strange change finally occurs with Anissa after Mark is lost to an alternate timeline later in the series. Once Mark returns to his original timeline, he learns that Anissa has greatly reformed. It almost feels like Anissa's change of heart is an attempt on the writer's part to ask the question, how much can really be forgiven? Anyway, since Mark's absence, a couple of things have changed. Not only is Anissa no longer a psychopath, but she's also married to a guy named Scott. And yeah, she gave birth to Mark's son, Marky, while Invincible was gone. At this point, Anissa is depicted as a truly devoted mother who genuinely loves her child. In a strikingly evocative scene, Anissa comes clean to Scott about her past misdeeds, especially her crimes against Mark. Maybe Earth is really a special place after all, since Anissa's human binds truly did reform her. The happiness is short-lived, however, as Anissa is soon called to save the planet from fellow Viltrumites, Craig and Lucan. Anissa is gravely injured in the fight, but in her dying moments, she confesses her crimes to Mark's partner, Eve. Unburdened and free, she dies soon after. Even Mark seems to have grown past the traumatizing events, and forbids Eve from making it public. Anissa's character is undoubtedly one of the most controversial ones we've ever seen in the comic. On the one hand, she is truly a complex character that undergoes real growth throughout her story, but her actions do leave a sour taste in the mouth. Maybe that's the reason why these events will most likely never take place in the show, which has even been confirmed by the creators. But this does leave us with one question unanswered. What will happen to Marky, Invincible's estranged son? Marky, Anissa and Invincible's son. So in the comics, Marcus Murphy, or Marky, takes up the mantle of Kid Invincible and continues his father's quest to save humanity. Marcus was raised by Scott, the man Anissa eventually married. By all means, Marky seems to be a pretty normal kid, but his veins contain Viltrumite blood. This of course grants him almost unsurpassable Viltrumite powers that are so revered across the galaxy. Marky would first learn all of his Viltrumite heritage after finally meeting Mark, after all those years of absence. At one point, after all the Viltrumites, including Invincible, left the Earth, Marky was forced to become Kid Invincible in order to take care of his home planet. The fact that one of the most bloodthirsty Viltrumites would give birth to Earth's next savior is actually pretty neat, and we're all for it. But still, since it's already been stated by the creative team that Mark's assault won't be a part of Amazon's show, it does make you wonder what will happen to Marky. Perhaps the writers will find another way for Anissa to conceive. You know, one that doesn't involve the R word. Or maybe we'll find Marky in an alternate dimension, as the show has already confirmed that they exist, through the actions of Angstrom Levy. There's also a chance that Marky's birth will be the result of a consensual relationship between Mark and Anissa, but that would drastically alter the way in which Mark's romantic relationships have been portrayed so far in the series. The show is also famous for taking creative liberties with many characters, and it would be extremely intriguing to see where they take Marky's character. Marvelous verdict. With Mark and Anissa's relationship, Invincible delivered one of the most uncomfortable and disturbing story arcs ever put on the pages of a comic book. Whether it does the story justice or not is something that each of us will have to decide on our own. But it does push the characters in interesting new directions. One thing we can claim with certainty is that this violent relationship between two invincible beings will definitely leave you a bit sick in the stomach. If that seems like something that you can endure and might even enjoy, the comics are surely a must-read for you. As for how this arc will be translated into the show, we can only wait and watch. But if the Amazon show shies away from this particular storyline, we believe that Anissa can still turn out to be a pretty intimidating character all on her own. So that's it for today, but do let us know what aspect of Invincible's story you'd like us to cover next. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay updated with all our marvelous content. Well then, we'll see you in the next one.